All we need is a little understanding. Walk a mile in their shoes. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the True Sweetheart Podcast. Today, we have myself, Annette, your host, and Christina Kimbrough. She is a military spouse, Navy, so I'm so thankful to have you on here today. There's so many things that you have to share, and I can't wait for the listeners to hear it because, as you know, for everybody that's listening, these stories are always so raw and personal and heartfelt from real people. And that's what I want to continue to share with you guys. So thank you, Christina, for being on here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll get into your story.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So yeah, like you said, I'm a military spouse. We live in Chesapeake, Virginia. So I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. And I met my husband in San Diego, and he's from Texas. So we always just laugh. People are like, "You've covered all the coasts." I'm like, we sure have. But my story really just begins, obviously in childhood. I'm a childhood survivor of trauma, but my mental health issues didn't show up until my mid-20s. And I really started sharing that online on Instagram in particular, and then speaking locally. And it kind of took off. So it was amazing. It was, I think people just resonated. I was really honest and real about my story. And then, but all the while I was drinking. So I identify as an alcoholic. I dealt with, addiction issues to alcohol. And a year ago in last January 2020, I moved home to Cleveland, Ohio to get sober. Because I kind of just hit a personal rock bottom, and, was just ready to, my husband, we were just at the place where we're like, we're going to either split up or you need help type thing. Mm-hmm. And so, we didn't separate legally by any means. It was an act to save our marriage. And I got treatment and then got sober in COVID, which has been just crazy in itself, and then just started sharing my story again online, like with my audience, and it's grown organically. And so I work right now as a micro influencer. So I'm not, if you don't know what that is basically I just share my story of hope and recovery, and then partner with brands, and then get paid to share their product, do that kind of thing. And, I just work with brands that align with, my story and my brand itself. So, it's been crazy. It's, I would say it's funny. It's like, it's not a career that I saw myself taking. Like I this is also just a whole new field. Influencing in itself is new. And obviously in the last 5 years or so. And so my husband and I just kind of looked at each other, and it's been in the last 6 months. And he's like, "Do you love this?" And I said, "I love it," and he's like, "Well, why don't you just try and let's do this full time?" And so here we are.
That's, I haven't never heard of micro influencer, but it makes
sense. Yeah.
So that's really amazing. So what made you decide to just be that vulnerable and share it? Because that's not easy at all.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it's not. And, well, but first of all, I always laugh. I tell people I have my bachelor's in communication, so I'm just a talker by nature. So, I love people. And so social media was just a natural thing for me, but, so I'll back up to when my husband, we were dating, at the time, but about 6 years ago, he was on a deployment, and I hospitalized myself for a panic attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. Because I'd never had one before. And then I went into suicidal ideation. So just not wanting to be here, type thing. And it scared me, because I'd never gone through that before. So I hospitalized myself. I was there like 3 days. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell. My mom knew, my grandma knew, and my husband knew, but he was on a carrier in the ocean somewhere. But and so I had to quit my job, all the things. And I got out and my friends were like, "Where were you?" Like what were you doing? And I remember feeling humiliated. Like I just felt like I couldn't share. And I remember being frustrated because I was like, if I had broken my leg or gotten in a car accident or something physical, people would have showed up with flowers or a card or. And so I started to share, and then people weren't mean, but they were just very awkward. They were like, "You went to the hospital for what?" You know what I mean? So that was frustrating to me, And so eventually, I stayed silent for a few years, kind of just trying to figure out how to take care of myself, all of that, and then I just decided to come out on Instagram and start sharing. And I say now, my goal is threefold. It's to educate people. I think we just don't really understand, which is completely, I get that. Like if you've never lived with it or don't know someone, why would you understand? So it's education. And then to provide hope, because I'm living with a chronic mental illness, right? A dual diagnosis, and living a wonderful life. Like I still have issues, of course, and life's hard, but my life is good for the most part. So to provide hope, and then end the stigma. I there's a huge stigma around addiction and mental health. So those are, my three reasons for sharing.
No, thank you. And that absolutely does take strength and bravery, because I think also in the space that we're in as a military spouse,
Right.
active duty or whatever the case is, it's hard to feel comfortable enough to do that. So
Yeah.
when you first started doing that, how was the response?
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I don't remember who it was, but I just remember like someone, or it was just like a kind of a known thing where people were like, "Don't tell him you're in the hospital. Like you're gonna, he's already under a lot of stress and like, he's dealing with so much and like just don't tell him," right? And I'm not here to speak. I don't ever give people advice or you know what I mean? I don't like to say like, this is what you should do. So maybe that works for some spouses, but that's not my relationship with my husband. He would have actually been really upset if I didn't tell him. He's like, "No, I want to know. I want to be there for you," type thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I would say at first it was like that, that like people were like, "Oh my God, you told him that? How could you do that?" Like he's deployed, like you need to hold down the home front, like you need to be strong, like rely on other people, you need to be there for him. So I think initially was the case, but then as time went on, I didn't shut up because I was like, "Screw y'all, I'm doing what I want." No, I didn't say it like that. I'm a lot nicer than that, but it was, it really was. It was just kind of like, and it was funny because I observed that response and I was like, well, this has to do with, to me, I would think this has to do something with the high alcoholism rates, suicide rates, all these things in our community, right? And so it made me even more passionate to share. I'm a very gracious person. I didn't go out there and tell those people things, but I was like, no, I'm just not going to stop talking.
No, good for you. We needed that because there's so many Facebook groups out there.
Mm-hmm.
For all of us in different communities. And I was just speaking about this last night, how there was a military spouse who was bullied in Facebook group. Mm-hmm. Maybe last year, a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And she took her life.
Oh my God.
It's just like...
Yeah. And on that, like, not to cut you out, I'm just passionate about this, but like, I remember it was like 3 years ago, I'm in Hampton Roads, area south of like DC. And, I was getting involved with everything military, right? Like, cause I love this community. And I remember I stood up, we had like a meeting on like mental health in the military in general. And I remember I stood up and I like asked a question. I said, "Do we know the statistics of deaths by suicide for spouses?" And everyone looked at me and they were like, "No." And I was like, "Why aren't we tracking that? Like, why don't we know?" Yeah. And so no one really had a good answer. And I'm not upset. It just kind of, and I just kind of pointed it out. I was like, well, it happens, and I said, And I shared what I'm sharing with you right now. And this was like 2 years ago or maybe three. And I said, um, I don't feel like I have the space to share my story. I don't feel like and I was like, I'm by no means like, hopefully don't come off like this, but I'm not taking away from the crisis of suicide from veterans. But I also think that we can have both conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think like me sharing my story is taking away from that. You know what I mean? And ironically, at the time, I was still in active addiction, so I hadn't even addressed that. But there's also, so we definitely don't have statistics on deaths by suicide for spouses, and then in our community, the drinking rates are just through the roof. I mean, I'm not sure if you've had that experience, but I came in as a girlfriend at like 25. I met my husband. I mean, and we were drunk the whole weekend, which it was 4th of July. It is what it is. I had a blast.
Right.
But we continued to drink. And, that's part of my story is my alcoholism, really continued and blew up in being a military spouse. And it was just normalized to drink at every occasion, and it was normalized to not only drink, but like blackout and get drunk, so it's, I'm not here to judge anyone, but it was just, I'm the outlier. I just put it that way.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, because those things, we don't talk about those things, especially military. We keep that in the house. There's no that we go out and share that stuff, especially if you're senior ranking.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
It's a lot of pressure.
Sure.
So we need people like you to say, I get it, I live it, and this is what I'm doing about it, because I think we have to just make that choice,
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things, like I always like to come on, like I say up front, like I'm not anti-drinking by any means. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm just, it didn't work for me, right? Like it doesn't. I can't ever have one. Like I'm just, that's my life, and that's okay. I've come to accept that, And I think I don't have the answers. I just think that if I could share my story and maybe someone goes and gets help a little bit quicker than I did, and I could save them the misery that I had to go through, or even, and I'm not even like, I don't think that everyone has to come out and share like I do. I'm making this my life's work. Like, this is what I want to do. But I think if we can just share and then let other people be like, wait a minute, maybe I do need help. I was just talking to someone about this with the alcohol thing. It's like, you don't have to identify as an alcoholic, but like, how is it impacting your life? Like, are you living your best life? Like, is alcohol keeping you from that? Are you hungover? Are you not present with your kids and your spouse? Like, I guess I'm just passionate about getting people to examine their relationship with substance.
Absolutely. And that's that right there. I mean, that's the passion. That's incredible, because we're not here to judge. We're just here to share with you what we went through and how there's hope. So
exactly.
I'm not going to judge you if you don't want to say anything, or if you do want to say anything, but maybe just relook your life and
exactly. Yep, you got it.
So no, I appreciate that, and gosh, it's just so needed. And I think especially now, there's just a lot of shit going on right now.
Tell me about it. No, for real. And that's why I've said, I'm like, I'm just more passionate than ever about sharing my story. I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure you've seen it. But like, yeah, like deaths by suicide are up during COVID, drinking's up, addiction's up. And so, I think it's just, I want to share now more than ever to show people that you can recover, and you can live a decent life, without substance, or, and I have a chronic mental illness. Like, so basically, like, it's my psychiatrists have said, like, some people go through phases, right, where they might be depressed and it'll go away. Mine has been with me. I think I'll probably be on medicine for a very long time. But my hope is just showing people, like, I manage it.
Yeah.
I manage it.
And it's okay.
And it's possible. Yeah.
It's okay to be on medication,
Exactly.
Saying, yeah, I take Prozac, or I've been taking Prozac for the past 10 years or whatever. But, if that's what helps, then that's what helps. And not everybody can take medication, so you meditate or you do whatever. So, but it's okay.
Yep.
To, to have it, to live with it. And I think one of the things my husband had to tell me when I was in that really dark place and feeling sorry for myself. He's like, okay, so are you going to live with it or are you going to suffer from it?
Oh, that's so good.
I was like, you're right. I could
Yeah.
continue to sit here and cry all the time and everything is wrong and nothing's my fault, or I can just own it,
Yeah.
say, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
You know, now
Yeah.
I'm going to do just like what you're doing. My passion is to share it, to give other people hope and, all that stuff. So it just, I think, I really feel that this is our calling, and it just takes somebody, one of us, to just raise our hand up and say this is it, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
For those that are afraid to use their voice, that aren't ready to use their voice. So yeah, no, I applaud you for doing that. It's scary, you guys. It is scary.
It's scary. Yeah. I say that all the time. I'm like, not all the time, but I'm always like, I just shared on Instagram about hospitalizing myself for, suicidal ideation. And, and because it's not something I talk about that often, it really isn't. And even though I'm an open book, it's still, that's one of the harder things to talk about, is hospitalization and suicide. And I understand though, because it's a very misunderstood topic, which again makes sense, and I also believe that for many reasons, but because we don't talk about it, and so, yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I was very nervous when I hit, share. But it's always funny is like, I mean, I've been doing this for like 2 years now pretty regularly, and I have gotten the best responses. I mean, I can truly say that I really have not had one person judge me. I mean, maybe they are silently, but I mean, the outpouring of support has just been, I mean, if anything, the only hard part is when people come back, and I'm sure, maybe you've gone through this, is and say, I'm currently struggling, or, I that's when it's hard, because I'm not a therapist,
Right.
and so I can't necessarily be there for them. There's always that line that I'm trying to balance and walk, but yeah, it's overwhelmingly positive, or good, people are so kind.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's really great. That's important. But even when you do get a negative response, how do you deal with that?
yeah, I mean, I would say, I kind of just look at it like I don't know that person and I don't know their journey.
Mm.
I think I've experienced abuse, and I think, looking back on the people that abused me, they were hurt too.
Mm.
So, it's an overly used phrase, but like, hurt people hurt people. So I think, when someone's angry or mean or whatever, I block them because boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, I've learned that therapy has taught me enough, whereas like, they're just not welcome in my space, like if you're going to be mean, I can't, you're not welcome in my space. But I am very kind, and I'll say, like, I wish you well. Like, I don't understand where this is coming from personally, but you probably are going through something. And then I block them, because, and then try to just forget about it. Cause what else can you do,
Yeah, no, you're right. Have you lost anybody? Let me start over. I've lost friends. Started this journey.
Yeah.
I think they just didn't know how to. They didn't know how to react, or they didn't know what to say, or they were like, "Why are you putting your stuff? Why are you putting your business out on social media?" So, and that that sucks.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, you know what? But if this is saving my life,
yeah,
and you don't want to be a part of it, then
yeah, that is what it is.
Have you experienced?
Luckily I've been blessed. No, my friends have been. It makes me cry. Like, just overwhelmingly kind. Just like, so, yeah, just kind. I think, but it also, it stems from, I've been vulnerable with my friends, so they've watched me on this journey, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, my best friend in the world from high school knew I was hospitalized, so she was one of the ones. But like, so once I started sharing openly, I don't think they were surprised. If anything, they're like, oh, it's just Christina. You know what I mean? So, I think, and maybe they didn't tell me and they're uncomfortable, and maybe that is true, but overwhelmingly I've been blessed. Yeah, it's been good.
No, that's amazing. And maybe they were just, they needed to be educated by you,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. Oh, for sure. Because I definitely have friends who, of course, maybe didn't go through it firsthand, and didn't understand. But I got blessed in the sense that they're very open-minded people, you know what I mean? And I think, I'm 32, so I think my generation also is just very like social media, like we just share our lives, you know what I mean? So I think it doesn't this isn't that strange. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like they weren't like shocked, if that makes sense. They were kind of like, we're kind of not like, none of my friends share like I do. I don't know anyone that shares like I do. But I'm just saying it's very like, it was just a natural transition. They were very, kind of like, this is just our world now. It's nuts, good or bad, it is what it is. So
Oh, that's so great. You educated them and you made it to the point where it was okay to
yeah.
share it because you should
Yes.
not be ashamed. We are
Totally.
trying to help other people as
Yeah.
well as ourselves, our
Yeah.
self-healing journey. So,
Totally. And you made me think of something good. If anything, it actually brought me closer to some relationships in my life because I think people felt like they could open up and share some of the darker things that they were going through. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Whereas like I've always had good friends and tried to be that person that was there for people, but I think people were more willing to let me in, even more so when we got closer and bonded more, when they were like, yeah, like actually I have depression, or oh yeah, I deal with anxiety, or my relationship is X, or whatever. So if anything, yeah, I think I grew closer to some people. So
No, that's amazing. And I just thought of what I had a couple of my soldiers end up even years later say, you know what, thanks for saying all that because I
yeah.
had a difficult time as well. But they didn't know
Yeah.
who to talk to because,
Right.
so it was just it's really quite the experience, and
It is.
I think we are really blessed no matter what the case is because we're still here to share.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And as someone who, has been on the brink of wanting to die and, all of those things, it's like I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm here, and honestly, to me, it's not about the numbers. Like, of course, it's nice to grow your following and the audience and all the things, right? But like, and like, if I could help one person, like I had someone DM me the other day who, was just having a hard time. And she's like, sometimes I look at your feed and she's like, if Christina can do it, then I can do it. And that just made me tear up. And I was like, that wasn't an insult. That was like, that made me feel good. You know what I mean? Because it meant that, she knows that I struggle. Because I'm very open. I'll share days where, I go through depression, where I can't get off the couch and shower, and it's interesting. I'm still figuring this out as a micro influencer. Like, what does that even look like? How do you share your story authentically and all the things? Because I do have really good days where I look nice and I'm dressed and all the things, and there's days where I don't, so I'm just learning how to balance all of it.
Yeah, no, and that's so real. That's what we need on Instagram.
Yeah, right.
We need the real stuff because gosh, I decided to check into TikTok. I swear,
Okay.
I swore I was never gonna do it ever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
20-year-old is on it, and I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
I was scrolling through, and I came across a couple of videos from these poor kids
Yeah.
were crying, and they were responding to something that they received negative feedback on.
Mhm.
Like, there's so many people out there on all these different social media platforms that are just trying to find that space
Yes.
to get heard. So
Yes.
it broke my heart because it's like, all they're trying to do is whatever, and people are still being mean.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
kids.
I
So
know.
I think that's even more reason why I wanted, I try to have the conversation so that it's pushed down to everybody to know that, we shouldn't really rely on what people say on social media because they
Yeah.
don't know you.
No, they don't. And
And
they never will.
no, they don't know what's going on. And even if they think they do, They don't. And so they're just trying to be ugly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes back to like what we were talking about. Like it's that hurt people hurt. You know what I mean? Like I really, maybe I'm like too optimistic, but I genuinely believe that I don't think people want to hurt people. I think it just comes from a place of pain themselves, you know? And they, of course, there are evil people, like of course, you know, but I'm saying in general, I believe that people, it's just a way to like, you know, communicate pain they're going through,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and they don't know how else to deal with it. So
they spit out words before they.
yeah,
I mean, it happens at all ages.
it does. It does. I'm telling you, I know.
It doesn't end. You're always gonna find that one, and you're like, really? We're in our 40s, man. You're gonna
Yeah, like,
so.
yeah. Oh no, it's funny you say that. You made me think of a story I didn't want to share. When I did get bullied by spouses as well, you know, and when I know. I moved in with my husband when we moved in when we were dating, like we didn't get married yet, and I moved from Cleveland, Ohio to Jacksonville, Florida to live with him. That's where he was stationed. And I just had some spouses say some nasty things about me, and like, she's coming down here to take all your men and she's not married, why would she do that? Yeah, I know. And it was just the crazy stuff. And I remember, and I was like 25, and I just remember being like, really? Like, I have a really kick-ass job in life, like all these things. You think I'm good? Anyway, so yeah, it doesn't change.
It doesn't. So
I think it's funny. I don't regret that experience. It's funny, now, because it's like I grew from it in the sense that I just remember being like, you know what? I'm not going to prove myself to these girls. Like, I'm going to be here, live with my now husband, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to be nice, and I'm just going to show them that I'm a genuine person, and then just let the chips fall where they may, and I never became friends with this person, but her friends I became friends with afterwards, and I learned, like, that she had been through so much trauma and was so upset personally, with her own life. And so I just remember thinking, like, just kill him with kindness.
Yeah.
Put those boundaries up. Like, I'm huge on the boundaries, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to return it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, you just reminded me of that story. I was like, oh yeah, I've been there.
Well, I love your passion and your fierceness. So it's so awesome to see that. I think we need more people like that in this type of community, because it's so hard. It's really hard. So, what do you see yourself doing next? What do you want to do?
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I actually just met with like a business coach yesterday to just kind of, because this is new to me. Like, I've just been steadily gaining followers and just like stuff like that and opportunities. And so, honestly, I think I want to parlay it when all of this COVID is over into public speaking, some kind of public speaking. And then I want to use my husband's GI Bill to become a therapist. And an addictions counselor. So I'll have a year sober February 3rd. So, thanks. Yeah. So, once I hit that, which, is less than a month away, I'm just going to kind of figure out what online school looks like and all of that. And then just, just continue sharing my story of hope and recovery online. It's been crazy. I always say, I'm like, COVID is awfully been awful, but for me, in a way, I always hold space for people, but like, I've also connected with people I never would have, so it's like, it's pushed me out of a comfort zone, and I've done Zoom meetings and made friends like you, like all over the place, and been able to share my story, whereas like maybe I wouldn't have, who knows,
right?
So I think it's definitely, I've taken my career and like it's birthed something I never would have dreamed of. So
I'm glad you said that, because this whole thing has been so crazy, but then again, we wouldn't have met all these people.
Yeah. Right.
Shared these stories. It's like, God he has some crazy plan.
I think so. I do. I do. I believe God too. Yeah. I have a faith, and that's why I'm like, maybe it's like, I try to look at the big picture, because I'm like, I really don't know the whole purpose. But yeah, I mean, like I shared, was sharing with the business coach, and I was like, I never saw this becoming a career, but it's weird. I was never one of those people who, I wish, but who woke up and like knew what they wanted to be when they grew up, like who had the calling, the figured it out. I've kind of like seriously stumbled my way through all of it, and at 32, I think I know I'm getting much closer. I'm like, I love doing this kind of thing, so I'm definitely getting closer.
That's awesome. No,
Thank
I
you.
really love that. So, what advice would you give to those that are still like, I don't know if I should share my story. I don't know what people will think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that question. I think it's I think you definitely need to know when to share. So I think a big thing is to forget my favorite writer, maybe Glennon Doyle, one of the big ones, Brene, I don't know. But said like you don't want to share from a gaping wound, right? So like you don't want to share when you're in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Not that you can't, right? But I think you just need to pay attention to who you share it to. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like make sure it's like when I right when I got out of the hospital, I didn't put it on Instagram, or I didn't share it to too many people. And not that you can't, but I think people may not be ready for it. And then you also may not be ready to get the response that you get. Does that make sense?
Yes. So true.
And you may not even be in the headspace to take on that response. So I would say, obviously it's a very, very personal journey. There's no share for 3 months, 6 months, but I would say the first thing to think about is like, am I ready to share type thing? Like where am I in my healing journey? Where am I? And then the second thing is, just also, be aware that you may not get the response that you want from people, and it's, I think you need to like, not you, but like people like that want to share is really dig deep and say, why am I sharing? I'm very pro sharing, right? But I think it's something that you don't want to just like come out and do. It's something that you want to think through,
That's true.
and and definitely like talk to a friend or like a spouse or someone first,
Right.
And figure out how you want to share. But yeah, my biggest thing would be like the gaping wound thing. Like just maybe when you're in the middle of it, maybe not sharing, or maybe once you're like right out of it, but that's hard too, because I shared my sobriety story a month in. So once I was a month sober, I felt comfortable sharing. Mm-hmm. So like I said, there's no magic time. I think it's just more about doing the work inside to kind of figure it out. So
right. And I think that's really important, because sometimes we feel like if we share it, we're going to be validated, but I don't think we shouldn't rely on that.
Yes. You literally put what I'm trying to say 100%, because I would do that too. Like exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is like figure out why you're sharing it. Are you doing it because you want to be seen and heard? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, because yes, absolutely. Because I have shared my story with people before and not gotten the response that I wanted, and I didn't know that I was even looking for a response until after I shared. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And exactly like you said. So like, yeah, like with the, sobriety was a pretty good experience, but I would say like the hospitalization, some people would just not know how to respond or not say anything, and that to me hurt even more, when people wouldn't say anything. So yeah, that is a very, very valid point. Is just, you need to be aware that like you may not get the response that you're looking for.
That is so true. So be ready.
Right.
Because you might not get it. And I think
and it goes back to exactly like, that's why I'm just like very, very like wanting people to say like, share it from a place where you're ready. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be completely healed. Like, look, I still got a lot of junk that I'm dealing with, and I'm talking all the time. But I'm also in a stabler place where I can handle feedback or, like pushback or whatever it is. Whereas if you're right in the middle of a divorce or getting sober or whatever your big thing is in your life, it's anyway. Yeah. No. So lovely. That's a great point.
Absolutely. It just made me think of when you're in an argument and you just say whatever. And
yeah.
You come back and it just like, it all comes out because you don't care. So it's just as sensitive as that. So kind of think
Yes.
before you write.
Yeah.
Before
You
you
know what's funny you said that is my husband, because he's Navy, we had to email each other, and there's nothing like fighting over email, right? You're a military spouse, aren't you?
yes.
Yeah, so you understand. So, but we have taken that, and we're not always perfect at this, but like when we're in a big argument and like, you know how like you argue and you just go in circles and like nothing's getting said. So anyway, we will like go in our separate corners and like write. So like we will write emails to each other, and say like, this is how I'm feeling. And then usually what happens is, it's always happened for me, is like the emotion gets taken out of it, the anger. And then I can almost step back and say, wow, I was being ridiculous or whatever. And then I like delete half of it, and then, so anyway, that's just really worked for us. So
No, that's great because I just
yeah,
learned about angry texting. You can
yeah,
texting sometimes is good, but bad because you don't.
yeah,
You think that you're arguing, but you're not because of the
yeah,
it's just this back and forth.
totally. Yeah. And the funny thing with texting that sucks is it's there.
Yes,
You can't take it back.
yes. Oh my God. It's so crazy. So so you gave the advice. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. So Instagram is just my first letter of my name, so C, and then Kimbrough, and then the number 1. And then my website is just simply my first name, Christina, Kimbrough.com.
ChristinaKimbrough.com. Perfect. Well, I am just so proud of you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see you in this journey now to help more people, and with your therapy and being a therapist and all that. It's just it takes a lot of strength and courage to do that. So thank you for reaching out and being on here and sharing the story. Keep us posted, or we'll go follow you on your
please do. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share my story. Your podcast is wonderful. This is a really good format for people to share, like longer form. I love that because I Instagram's great, but it's only like a paragraph. So I think these are just really valuable. This is a very valuable medium. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you more and seeing your journey. Thank you for listening to the Truths We Hide podcast, created and founded by your host, Annette, the founder of A Wild Ride Call Life. Also, a big thank you to all of our sponsors for each and every episode that is aired. We have so much support from them and all of our listeners. You can find more information at www.awildridecalllife.com.